Hello everyone, my name's Jonathan Morris. I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at UNSW. It's my pleasure to welcome you to 3MT. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Benegal, Gadigal and Ngunnawal people, who are the traditional custodians of the lands on which the campus of the university are placed on. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are present here today. And welcome to all of you for coming and braving the rain. It's great to see you all here. I want to especially welcome the VC and the Chancellor and special guests, particularly our Aspire High School students. It's really great to see you here. I've been Dean for about 8 months, so this is my first 3MT in this role, and I've always loved 3MT. I think it's a great opportunity to really highlight our high degree researchers. They are the engine room of our research effort. They're the people who really do the work. They're always at the cutting edge, and I'm really passionate about being involved in helping people come here, have a good time while they're here, and then graduate. Obviously, high degree researchers sometimes work in teams, sometimes they work alone, but together, they form an amazing cohort. There's over 4,500 high degree researchers at this university, and so it's a major research effort. Tonight we're going to hear from 22 of our best people. They've had to fight their way through the faculty heats to get to here, and so it's going to be really great to see them explain their research. For people who are new to 3MT, it came from a revelation of the University of Queensland. The Dean at the time, there was a drought in Queensland, surprise, surprise, and he wondered whether you could actually give your research in 3 minutes, which was the 3 minutes you're meant to take in the shower. And so these guys basically have to imagine they're in the shower presenting their research. Obviously what you're going to see today, I think, is not just the range of research that UNSW is doing, but you're also going to see a fundamental skill that I think all researchers need, and people who come from university, as part of their training is actually being able to present their work to others in simple terms and in ways that help others to understand the complexities of the problem. And this is certainly something that's not easy, and I certainly know almost all academics are really glad that no one's decided to make academics do 3-minute thesis type presentations, and so we leave it to our brilliant high degree researchers. So what I'd like to do now is actually introduce Erin McCartney. She is our MC for the day. She did 3MT last year as a finalist, and please welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Jonathan, and welcome to everyone. I can guarantee that we're in for an inspiring evening. So to start off with, it is a pleasure to welcome to the stage Chancellor David Gonski.
Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I welcome all of you here today, and I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this university stands. You did notice, I hope, when Professor Morris said, you're going to hear from 22 of our best people. Well, I'm the 23rd. And when you hear the 22, you're going to know why he wasn't referring to me. This is positively one of the best things we do at this university. I absolutely envy each of you, and I'll be there as one of them, who are going to hear some fine words from our great PhD aspirants. I don't envy the judges, but I do thank them sincerely for putting the time in, and I do hope they'll give their judgment by this time next year. Ladies and gentlemen, this university, as you know, Manu et Mente, is basically a mixture of theory and practice. And what you're going to see from these wonderful people is how we're progressing so wonderfully along that line. I'm very proud to be associated with the university, but I definitely will never voluntarily miss the 3MT, and I think my 3 minutes are up.
Thank you, David. So just to let you know how this event will run, in a moment I will introduce you to our wonderful judges. I'll then run through the details of the competition and tell you about the exciting prizes. And then, what we're all waiting for, the competitors will be pitching their research topics to us. After the last speaker, the judges will deliberate and you can cast your People's Choice vote. Once the winners are announced, we ask that you join us for drinks and finger food in the foyer. So we have some wonderful judges here this evening who have generously given us their time. We have Mr. Bill Manos. Bill is an investor of Sydney Angels and owner of the private investment company Manos Capital. Previously, Bill held a number of council roles, including Deputy Lord Mayor and Chair of the Planning and Finance Committees for Adelaide. Additionally, Bill was a Judge's Associate, lawyer and founder of Manos Pierre & West and co-founder of Mancorp. We also have Dr. Robin Williams. Dr. Williams is a science journalist and presenter of The Science Show and Occam's Razor on ABC's Radio National, and narrated such programs as Nature of Australia and Catalyst, and appeared on World Safari with David Attenborough. Robin has received several accolades, including honorary doctorates from 5 universities. He was appointed AM in 1988, was named a National Living Treasure by the National Trust in 1997, and has a star named after him by the Sydney Observatory. We also have Dr. Christine Evans. Dr. Evans is a Wiradjuri woman with cultural connection to the Mudgee region of New South Wales. Her current role as Chief Education Officer, Aboriginal Education at the New South Wales Education Standards Authority follows 15 years of working at the University of Technology and Visual Arts Education and Aboriginal Education. Christine's research focuses on Aboriginal voice and educational processes. Besides her work in education sector, Christine is chair of the Indigenous Advisory Group of the Museum of Contemporary Art and is an MCA board member. We also have Dr. Niraj Lal. Dr. Lal graduated with a PhD in physics from the University of Cambridge in 2012 and was named one of the ABC's top 5 scientists under 40 in 2016. He's a visiting fellow at the ANU, children's book author, and has appeared as a guest physicist on Todd Sampson's Life on the Line and Dr. Karl's Outrageous Acts of Science. Niraj is the current presenter of ABC's Sciencey on iView, which is a science series answering some of the strangest questions in the universe in under 7 minutes with inappropriate swimwear. We also have Carl Smith. Carl is a Walkley Award-winning science reporter on the ABC's Science Unit. He makes radio documentaries for Radio National's science programs and writes and co-hosts Kids Ethics podcast Short and Curly. Carl worked briefly as a geneticist before joining the ABC. And we also have Tania Safi. Tania was a winner of the International United Nations Plural Plus Film Festival in 2014 and the Best Use of Short Video in 2016. Tania has been creating film and video content for BuzzFeed News and Entertainment, the ABC, and for international NGOs. More recently, she hosted talks at MadFest in London on the power of film and was invited to speak at the United Nations 8th Global Forum on Video and Peace Building. She is currently developing a series and founder of Shui Shui, featuring change makers around the world. We also have a group of special guest judges, high school students in Year 10 and 11 from the Aspire program. Aspire is a UNSW schools outreach program that works with school students to support their educational aspirations. Aspire works with both Metropolitan Sydney and regional New South Wales, with over 50 partner primary schools, high schools, and central schools. This year at 3MT, we have 2 schools representing the Aspire program as VIP guests, Chester High School and Auburn High School. They will be awarding a special Aspire prize for the presentation they enjoy the most. Now on to the rules. They're extremely simple. 1, contestants must adhere to the 3-minute time limit. 2, only one static slide can be used. And 3, no props are allowed. Judges will be looking for the following elements of each presentation. Comprehension. Did the presentation provide an understanding of the background to the research question being addressed and its significance? Content. Was the thesis topic, key results, and research significance communicated in language appropriate to a non-specialist audience? Engagement. Did the speaker make the audience want to know more? And communication. Did the speaker have sufficient stage presence, eye contact, and vocal range, maintain a steady pace, and have a confident stance? And for our prizes tonight, we have first prize, which is $3,000 plus entry to the 2019 Asia Pacific 3-minute thesis competition, which will be hosted at University of Queensland. First prize also includes competing in the U21 final, which is a virtual event with judges watching video entries rather than live presentations. Second prize is $1,500, and third prize is $500. People's Choice Prize, as chosen by you, is $1,000, and the Aspire Award Prize is $500. So, now on to the part we have been waiting for, tonight's presentations. The presentations will run one after the other, and unfortunately we won't have time for questions after each talk, but I'm sure the presenters will be happy to chat to you afterwards. So, without further ado, I'd like to ask the first speaker up. Our first speaker is Daniel Whedon, talking about how should we tax pensioners.
Did you know that if you are a pensioner in Australia, you face an extra tax compared to everyone else? It's a tax that's built into the very pension that you receive. This is because in Australia, the age pension is means tested. It's restricted to those with a limited income or assets. Every Australian over 67 is entitled to a pension, but if you continue to earn an income, the pension you receive is reduced. It's withdrawn at a rate of 50 cents for every dollar that you earn above a threshold. If your income is high enough, it can be reduced to zero. That rate, 50 cents in the dollar, is known as the taper rate, and it's an important part of our pension system. It helps to ensure that on the one hand, the pension is targeted at the people that need it most, while on the other, keeping the cost of the pension down. But it is effectively a tax. If you want to earn income as a pensioner, the government will tax your pension. And if it is a tax, it's a very high one. 50 cents in the dollar. Not even the top income earners pay that much. Such a high tax rate is bound to discourage pensioners from continuing to work or to save. In my research, I consider what is the best taper rate to manage, to balance, on the one hand, the need to keep the pension targeted to the right people, while on the other, not to discourage pensioners from remaining in the workforce if they wish to. In short, what is the best way to tax pensioners? And I consider whether the answer to that question is not a single taper rate at all, but a sliding scale of different rates. After all, we don't have a single income tax rate, but we have a progressive tax system whereby those who earn less face a low tax rate, while those who earn more face a higher one. Perhaps we could do the same for the pension. Those pensioners that don't earn any additional income or earn very little could face a low taper rate, while those who earn more, higher income could face a higher taper rate. In my research, I built a model that showed it was a simple model, but it showed that it was possible for a progressive taper system to work better than a single taper rate. I'm now working on a more realistic model to try to identify which set of taper rates offers the best outcome for Australians of all ages. Ladies and gentlemen, in Australia, we tax pensioners. My research is about finding a way to do that better. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Next up, we have Kristen Overton on India's superbug epidemic, exploring the social dynamics of antibiotic use.
I want you to imagine a woman in her 60s, recently retired, travelling around India. Unfortunately, whilst climbing the stairs at the Taj Mahal, she trips and falls and breaks her hip. She's taken to a nearby hospital where she undergoes an operation to fix the fracture before being transferred to a hospital in Sydney. Within a few days of her transfer, she becomes unwell with fevers. The doctors commence standard treatment for a suspected infection. However, the infection in her blood, originating from her surgical site, is a superbug. They change to a toxic, last resort antibiotic. Luckily it works though, and she recovers. But a few days later, a young man on the same ward becomes sick, infected with the same superbug. However, he recently underwent a kidney transplant, so despite receiving the same antibiotic, he becomes sicker and sadly dies. Whilst you might think this is a far-fetched story, this is already a reality at hospitals in Australia. Antibiotic resistance is one of the biggest threats facing our health. But simply addressing the issue as a medical problem fails to realise that it is in fact also a social problem. Antibiotic use is shaped by the social, cultural, political and economic contexts where they are being used, by things like the relationship between patients and doctors, or the differences in how a healthcare system is structured or funded. To date, research focusing on the social aspects of antibiotics has tended to only focus on developed countries. Nowhere in the world is the reality and effects of antibiotic resistance more obvious than in India, yet research in the country is limited. My thesis aims to help address this imbalance. To do this, I conducted 100 interviews and observation with doctors, medical professionals, pharmacists and community members in Hyderabad, India. My results focus on the participants' accounts of labour risks and hazardous work, inequitable access to sanitation and healthcare, and ineffective governance. Then, drawing on a range of social theories, I've been able to explore how these facts have shaped antibiotic use in India. Hopefully then, knowledge of these social dynamics can be used to inform programs that aim to improve antibiotic use in India, that's tailored to the context, rather than pan-national approaches which do little to accommodate the social and cultural. Hopefully then, we can halt the rapid escalation of antibiotic resistance and prevent more people dying from superbugs. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Next up, we have Simon Lloyd on reclaiming urban rivers. Is it clean enough to swim?
The great stink, the toxic sludge. Would you go for a swim in a river with one of these nicknames? Once beautiful and curvaceous, rivers in our cities have been straightened, starved of oxygen and fed our waste, from sewage to chemicals to plastics. Perhaps worse, these waterways have lost our affection. When we flush the toilet or fertilise the garden, we don't think about the river. And why would we? For most of us who live in cities, these urban waterways don't bring any obvious benefit. But what if we could change people's relationship with the river, just by allowing them to swim in it? This has become a goal for cities worldwide. New York, a swimmable Hudson River. London, a swimmable Thames. And Sydney, a swimmable Parramatta River by 2025. But after years of contamination, how are these rivers going to earn a clean reputation? Step one, and the first part of my research, is to wait for it to rain. Rain washes pollution from urban areas into drains, and these drains flow into creeks and rivers. So this year, we've been collecting water samples in the river after rain. What we're most interested in is the level of fecal contamination. Fecal bacteria in human sewage presents the main health risk to swimmers. On to step two, what to do about human poo. We're designing and building a biological water filtration system. The system is designed to mimic self-cleaning processes that occur in healthy rivers. The most important component? The biofilm. Now picture this. Take a pebble and dip it in a tub of silky smooth honey. Once the excess strips off, that thin glossy film remaining around the pebble, this resembles a biofilm. Biofilms grow underwater, and in rivers, they provide the perfect home for good bacteria to live and feed on harmful pollutants as they float by. Now, with cleaner water in mind, are you looking for a place to improve your freestyle or just a quiet spot to dangle your feet? This is one of many questions we're asking the public to help us design riverside places where people want to come and swim, destinations that might one day see the Parramatta River outshine Bondi Beach. So, a clean river means you can eat the fish you catch. It means an Aboriginal grandmother can pass on her waterway knowledge to the next generation. It means while working in the CBD, you could take a freshwater dip on your lunch break. So, what are you waiting for? Let's go for a swim.
Thank you, Simon. Next up, we have Hamish Fibbins. Exercise is medicine, but how do we get doctors to prescribe it?
Imagine a pill that could help you lose weight, improve your sleep, and make you live longer. Now also imagine that this same pill could improve your mood and help reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety. Imagine that to take this pill, you didn't have to pay a cent. Now, I keep saying imagine, but we don't have to. It already exists. Well, sort of. While we can't bottle it up into a pill, we have overwhelming evidence showing the benefits of exercise for not only improving our physical health, but also our mental health. Exercise reduces depression symptoms, improves brain cognition, and can even help manage symptoms of schizophrenia. So why aren't people accessing these benefits from the mental health system? Well, one of the reasons is doctors report they don't have the knowledge or the confidence to talk to their patients about exercise. 60% of Australians don't exercise enough, and rates of mental illness are increasing, so it's time we took a new approach to mental health care. The first step is upskilling our clinicians to be more confident in talking to their patients about the benefits of exercise for their mental health. And this is where I step in with my research with a pretty unique way of engaging clinicians. And this is by getting them out there and exercising themselves. Exercise interventions targeting mental health clinicians. The idea is that if we can get a doctor to start exercising more, they will see firsthand the benefits of exercise, both physical and mental, and be more inclined to bring it up with their patients. So just up the road at Prince of Wales Hospital, we recruited over 200 mental health clinicians. We tested their fitness and asked them about their confidence in talking to their patients about exercise. They then met one-to-one with an exercise specialist who, over 4 weeks, helped them with their own physical health goals and increasing their exercise. At the end of the intervention, we saw not only improvements to their physical fitness, but also in their ability to talk to their patients about exercise. I continue now with my research to look at how we can embed interventions like these in mental health settings across Australia. Right now, it's just not possible to get all the effects of exercise into a single pill. But what is within our grasp, with a little work, is to be able to go to our doctor and be prescribed exercise alongside mental health medication. This is the holistic care that we should be expecting. And if we want to start working towards improving the quality of mental health care in Australia, we need to be working towards implementing it now. Thanks.
Thank you, Hamish. And next up, we have Riza Veloso. Is music special for people with dementia?
Where words fail, music speaks. We see this plastered across the internet and punctured onto the skin of our bodies. But for people with dementia, does music speak? Is music special for bringing back lost memories? To answer this, I interviewed close caregivers of people with dementia, like spouses, nurses, and social support workers. I asked about musical activities aimed at people with dementia, like music listening or group singing. But I took a novel approach, and I also asked about non-musical activities as well, like arts and craft or going to the cinema. Importantly, I found out where each of these activities did and didn't bring back memories in a person with dementia. My results were surprising. When looking at such a wide range of activities, music was not the special component for memory recall. Instead, it was normal social interaction. When caregivers were able to ask specific and open questions like, "How's your wife?" or "What happened next?" memories were slowly drawn out from a person with dementia. Music was one of many conversation starters, but the mere presence of music did not guarantee an evoked memory. Still, the caregivers themselves held a strong personal belief that music activities and memories were inseparable. And that brings us back to these tattooed words. But this line is in fact a misquote from a fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. His original words were not an exaltation of music's power. He simply said, "Where words fail, sounds can often speak." So we have morphed his words into what we want them to mean. The reason why my results are unexpected is because people hope and believe that music is inherently special for people with dementia. And before I started my PhD, as a classical musician myself, I used to believe it too. However, we cannot let these findings adjust our music abilities. Dementia will affect over 130 million people worldwide by 2050, and there is no cure. So the way forward is to focus on activities that have some element of socialization. Because for people with dementia, music is not the only thing that speaks, it is just one of the many things that can. Thank you.
Thank you, Riza. And the next speaker is Sarah Alexandru, The Road to Resistance.
What do breast cancers and bad drivers have in common? Well, they're both aggressive and they don't obey the traffic signs and the road rules. The cell cycle is the road that all our cells drive on. Along this road, when a traffic light turns from orange to red, a healthy cell will obey the road rules and stop. A breast cancer cell, like a bad driver on the other hand, won't stop. Instead, they'll ignore the lights and keep going, potentially endangering others. 2 years ago, drugs called cell cycle inhibitors were added to the treatments of breast cancers. Cell cycle inhibitors worked by forcing the bad driving breast cancer cells to come to a screeching halt by introducing a barrier to block the road. Cell cycle inhibitors have been crucial in minimizing the number of bad driving breast cancer cells on the road, which greatly improves patient survival. But unfortunately, some breast cancer cells have found a way around the roadblock and have started driving again. My PhD is focused on understanding these aggressive cells and their inability to follow simple road rules. To study this, I've taken breast cancer cells and exposed them for up to 400 days to a cell cycle inhibitor. By closely monitoring the cells, I've been able to map out their road to resistance and watch as their driving skills deteriorate. By looking right down to the molecular level of the cell, I've been able to show how a breast cancer cell's DNA can play a role in how it bypasses this roadblock of cell cycle inhibition. Not only do these breast cancer cells produce too much DNA, the DNA they produce is extremely damaged and unstable, making them risky and unsafe drivers. Instead of stopping when they come to this roadblock, they make an impulsive decision and start traveling down a dangerous side road. While on this hazardous road, the breast cancer cells can decrease 2 key proteins that regulate the brakes of the cell cycle. By reducing these proteins, the breast cancer cells are essentially cutting their own brakes, so there's nothing to stop them from speeding to their destination. 1 in 8 of us ladies and 1 in 650 men will be diagnosed with breast cancer, and a portion will develop resistance to cell cycle inhibitors. But now we know the deadly road these cells are speeding on, we can focus on preventing these dangerous cells from reaching their final destination, a fatal form of breast cancer. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And next up we have Ankita Singh, How to Get the Bridging Fuel of the Future, Natural Gas.
You wake up and want to start your perfect morning by getting a hot shower. Then you cook some delicious breakfast and drive your car to work. But then you wake up again to realize this was all a dream. You have to wake up and have cold showers because there is no electricity to heat water. You have to have cold breakfast because there is no gas. You have to walk to work because there is no fuel. This is reality without natural gas. Natural gas remains trapped in the rock layers several kilometers below the surface of the Earth. We cannot dig up all the land to get the natural gas out. So how do we know how much natural gas is in the land we stand today? You read my thesis. Natural gas is what we need, and therefore, this is what my PhD is about. I look at how do we estimate how much natural gas is in the land we stand today with the most certainty. And for that, I use 3 main ingredients: a supercomputer, a rock sample, and some computer vision techniques. Now let's assume this room is a land where there are natural gas sweet spots. Dr. Lal, you're our first sweet spot. And we're going to drill a well under your chair, extract a small piece of rock sample, and then take X-ray images of this and utilize it to look through our supercomputer. And what we realize is that this rock looks just like a sponge. It has empty spaces called pores, and this is where your natural gas remains trapped. So if you know the number of pores, you know the amount of natural gas. Now, here's the catch. These pores are actually as thin as your human hair, and if I give each and every one of you in this room to tell me how many pores do you see in this image, you'll actually give me a different number. Identifying pores is a victim of human subjectivity. And this subjectivity can actually cause natural gas companies thousands, if not millions of dollars. And therefore, I use my computer vision techniques, which are the same techniques that a doctor uses to identify fractures in X-ray images of bones. I use the same approach to identify pores in X-ray images of rocks. And the benefit of this technique is that it allows you to calculate statistical parameters that automatically indicate the presence of pores. So now that we are certain with the amount of natural gas in this tiny bit of rock, we know how much natural gas that's in this room and also in the surface of the Earth below our ground. Now this natural gas is important because it's the bridging fuel of the future. It is a complement to our renewable sources to ensure our power grid is resilient. And overall, we want to have a good start to our morning and not read my thesis, so that you use 3 main ingredients: the mighty supercomputer, a block of rock, and a pinch of computer vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankita. And next up we have John Kokonos, Igniting a Civil War Within the Fortress of Pancreatic Cancer.
Imagine a great and powerful city set on a high hill. This city is surrounded by a deep-set stone fortress, and for decades no one has conquered it. Time and time again, great armies have come up against this citadel, but no one has been able to penetrate the thick fortress walls. Such a battle I have joined against the defensive mechanism that protects pancreatic cancer. Pancreatic cancer is a death sentence. Almost no one survives. In fact, most patients die within 3 to 6 months following diagnosis. And this has barely changed in the last 3 decades. I started my journey trying to understand why pancreatic cancer is so aggressive, so deadly. Well, when we look down the microscope, this is what we see. The tumour is surrounded by dense scar tissue, like a fortress protecting and supporting the tumour. Worse still is that within this fortress lie a group of helper cells that continuously feed the tumour with nutrients and growth factors. We now know that this cellular network is what makes pancreatic cancer so unique and so hard to combat. That is why for decades, pancreatic cancer has remained unconquered. We, however, have embarked on an ambitious strategy to conquer the pancreatic capital. We have designed a gene therapy nanodrug that, like a system of spies, can penetrate this fortress and reprogram the tumour cells, these green ones, converting the pro-tumour signal coming from the helper cells into a death signal. When we do this, it is like a civil war begins. The helper cells that were once feeding and supporting the tumour are converted into killer cells, and all of a sudden they start destroying the tumour. Following this, we then identified another drug already used in the clinic to activate this same death signal. When we combined this drug with our gene therapy nanodrug, we saw the tumour cells start to die really quickly. Importantly, we tracked down the precise mechanism by which this occurs. And this has totally changed the way we understand how cancer cells respond to these death signals. This revolutionary approach could signal the death knell to the scourge of pancreatic cancer. After decades in which fellow scientists have taken a battering ram to the disease's defences, the only weapon in their arsenal, perhaps, just perhaps, pancreatic cancer may become a treatable, or dare I say, a curable disease.
Thank you, John. And next up, we have Cecile Medai talking about ethnic aspirations in Myanmar.
Let me ask you a question. What aspirations do you have for the world you want your children to live in? A safe world? A peaceful world? Or a comfortable world? Would you desire that so much that you would want to name your firstborn child safe, peaceful, or comfortable? That sounds audacious, but that's exactly what my friend in Myanmar has done. She wants an ethnic federation so much that she named her firstborn son Federal. My research focuses on the reforms needed to satisfy the aspirations of ethnic people, like baby Federal's parents, in the context of Myanmar's tricky democratic transition. Most of you will know about the Rohingya, but ethnic conflict affects many other minorities that have been fighting a government dominated by the Bama majority for almost 70 years. I wanted to find out what kind of reforms could bring about ethnic peace. This question is not new, but my research is the first to bring in a grassroots perspective. Using an ethnographic approach, I spent almost a year with two groups, the Mon and the Pa'o, conducting interviews and focus group discussions with many people from different walks of life. This is what people told me. Inequality with the Bama majority is the main challenge that they face at the cultural, economic, social, and political levels. The dominance of the Bama language, the exploitation of natural resources by the Bama military, and the control by a Bama-dominated political party are all examples of policies that perpetuate Burma privilege. I found that to address Burma privilege, Mon and Pao people aspirations call for two main reforms: equality and autonomy. What does this mean? Equality includes the recognition of cultural identity and the right to speak your own language, access to economic opportunities and the right to benefit from natural resources, and participation in political life. Autonomy. Autonomy implies the creation of a federation of ethnic states where all groups can govern themselves as they want. Interestingly, this autonomy is perceived as the best way to guarantee equality, and that's why the creation of a federal state is so dear to baby Federal's parents.
Thank you, Cecile. And now we have Christian Criado Perez talking about evidence-based management, confronting ignorance with facts.
An average person, like you or me, makes over 30,000 decisions every day. Now, fortunately, most of these decisions are quick and effortless, like having toast or Cheerios for breakfast. But other decisions will be far more important. Pick one of those, one that really mattered to you, and ask yourself, did I really do my best to base it on strong evidence? For most of us, it's often not the case, right? And that's fine if it's a trivial decision. But what if it has far-reaching consequences, like having a heart surgery? What if it affects society as a whole, like climate change? Are we really basing these decisions on strong evidence? All of the great solutions we've discovered, they're all pointless if they end up in a closed drawer. Let me show you an example of what happens when a community starts to completely ignore the evidence around them. The Flat Earth Society. An entire movement dedicated to convince you, and quite successfully, that the planet actually looks like this. And it's clear, right? Look at the horizon. It looks pretty flat to me. There's also an ice wall at the edge of the planet that if you're keen to visit, they're organizing a cruise trip. Oh, and Australia, well, I'm sorry, but it just doesn't exist. How come? Well, there's no such thing as down under. Now, admittedly, this is just one community, but leaders are often relying on the same flawed logic when running countries and organizations. Some are not only not evidence-based, but they're actually taking pride in it. What is going on here? I'm interested in taking apart the decision-making process to try to understand how we're falling short from well-informed decisions. We know that to make good decisions, we need to collect information and then make sense of it to choose an appropriate course of action. My research objectively measures each of these steps for the first time to identify where and why we're falling short. In doing so, we aim to clarify why some people are more evidence-based than others. What cues might help foster evidence-based practice? And more importantly, how can we help our leaders and individuals like you and me to make better, well-informed decisions that help us achieve our goals in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Next up, we have Young Kyung Park talking about Korean bibimbap parents and bilingual children in Sydney.
Annyeonghaseyo, guten Abend. Ich heiße Sophie Young-Kyung-Park. Comment allez-vous? Je vous remercie. 화타시 학연기대에서 잘 지내요. Did you know more than half of the world populations are bilinguals or multilinguals? Bilingual is the person who can use 2 different languages in various contexts for different purposes, alternatively and regularly. My research originates in my personal desire as a bibimbap mother to raise my 2 children who are both born in Australia to become a confident bilingual. Growing up as a bilingual is a long and complicated process in harmony with many components. Amongst the many, parents' beliefs and everyday practices at home environment have a significant effects on young children's bilingual abilities. However, current bilingual research highlights the cases the young children from immigrant families did not become effective bilingual users living in a context where the heritage language is not the dominant language. Heritage language is the community language used by immigrant parents and children. Why does it matter? Often, the level of the language these young learners can use, either English or heritage language, would put them at risk. These challenges include academic failure, antisocial engagement, mental health issues, difficulties in family communication, low self-esteem, and identity crisis. So, I conducted follow-up research to my master's thesis, which looked at Korean bibimbap mothers. Bibimbap is one of the traditional well-known Korean healthy food with a variety of lightly and separately seasoned vegetables, chili sauce, rice, and egg, sometimes beef mince, as you see on the slide. These bibimbap mothers, as they did for making bibimbap, they meticulously chose, added, and managed rich and diverse language-related activities to produce a nice dish of bilingualism for their children. This time, using qualitative approach and collecting a new data from self-report and focus group interview, I include the fathers' voices to draw a clearer and holistic picture of these bibimbap parents with a school-aged child attending one of the community language program in Sydney. So this new project will enable families, policymakers, and educators to understand how bilingualism can be carried out in multiple ways within these under-researched immigrant families to make practical policies and school curriculums and culturally appropriate partnership between home and school community for a vibrant multilingual Australia. Thank you. 고맙습니다. 보라해.
Thank you, Young Kyung. Now we have Susan Everingham talking about time-travelling seeds, revealing the effects of climate change.
What is the typical image that comes to mind when you think of time travel? A flashy, fast machine? Or maybe the DeLorean from Back to the Future? Well, I've discovered a new method of time travel, and during my PhD, I've been using plant seeds to time travel. Hundreds of seeds were collected by scientists many decades ago and locked away in freezer vaults. I have been able to travel back in time by unlocking these seeds and growing them to learn exactly how our plants grew in the past and measure their historic adaptations. In a controlled glass house right here at UNSW, I grew thousands of these historic seeds, right alongside modern plants from the same set of species. This allowed me to measure how much plants have changed through time and if these changes are in response to climate change. I have found that plants have already changed a lot through time. Plants are changing the way they are growing and reproducing, including adapting in their height, their leaf chemistry, and their seed size. And not only have plants changed a lot through time, these changes are actually in response to climate change. What was interesting, though, was that it wasn't the aspects of climate that I had predicted to have the greatest push on these plants adapting. It wasn't increases in average temperature or decreases in average rainfall that had the biggest impact on these plant adaptations. It was actually changes in extreme measures of climate, such as heat waves and dry spells, and climate instability, which had the biggest impact on our plants. These extreme measures of climate are predicted to come on strong into the future as the climate becomes more unstable. But our plants may just have the ability to respond to this climate change. This is exciting news for the future of the survival of plant species. My research presents a glimmer of hope that as the climate continues to change, our natural ecosystems and our crop food resources may be able to adapt and survive into the future. But my results are in response to current rates of climate change. And here's the problem. The Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change has predicted that in just the next few decades, there will be drastic increases in temperature. If countries around the globe do not join together to make important decisions about the future of our planet and lower greenhouse gas emissions, the rate of climate change may become too fast for our plant species to keep up, adapt, and survive. No plants, no food, no oxygen, no future.
Thanks, Susan. Now we have Uksha Varshni talking about solar cells. It's all about the toppings.
Thank you. An ancient philosopher once said, "The man who chases 2 rabbits catches neither." But as a PhD researcher, this is easier said than done. As a lot of times, I think about food while working and think about work while eating. Fortunately, this juggling has proved beneficial towards my cause. As my favorite food, the pizza has been quite an inspiration. I work on solar cells, the devices that generate electricity from the sun and hold a great promise for the future as they do not harm our environment. Most of the solar cells today are made up of silicon, and their process of making mimics that of making a pizza. As a pizza starts with a base and is then covered with a bunch of toppings, solar cells starts with a base of silicon and they're then topped up with a couple of thin layers on top. We all know that our pizzas doesn't taste the same after being in the fridge for a few days. But what if I tell you that solar cells have a similar problem? Their ability to absorb sunlight and generate electricity actually reduces after being out in the sun for a few years. And although losing a slice or 2 of a pizza is just a matter of few bucks, losing about 10% of this otherwise generated electricity accounts for about $2.1 billion every year. So in my PhD, I'm trying to find new ways to reduce this degradation in the cells and to make cells that will perform their best throughout their time span. And for ideas, I again turn up to my good old friend, the pizza. As the flavor of the pizza can be controlled with our choice of topping, my research shows that I can improve the long-term performance of my cells by carefully controlling these thin layers on top of them. So how am I doing it? So far, I have found 2 new solutions as shown on the graph in my slide. Number 1, I have observed that this degradation in the cells can be minimized by reducing the thickness of these layers. In perspective, it's how if you apply a little less tomato sauce on the pizza, you can prevent it from going soggy. Number 2, I've also observed that I can improve the long-term performance of my cells by carefully reversing the order of these layers. Exactly how? Placing the cheese slice before the sauce or above it makes a difference for the pizza. By incorporating these simple yet crucial techniques in the industry, we can make better improved solar cells, saving billions and billions of dollars in clean electricity generation. And then in the end, I can successfully defend my PhD, and we can all leave the next generations with tastier pizzas and a healthier planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Utkasha. Now we have Georgina Carson talking about computers of the future, using tiny particles to solve big problems.
Thanks. "50 years ago, astronauts landed on the moon using a computer less powerful than a mobile phone. This was one of the first computers, and since then, computing technology has driven science forward, from modern medicine to the internet. Today, we are on the brink of the next computing revolution. My research involves developing a new kind of computer called a quantum computer, which will solve scientific problems that today's computers just can't do. Every computer works using bits of information. You could think of these bits like tiny light switches. Each one can be either on or off, 1 or 0 in computing terms. The Apollo 11 computer had a few thousand bits, while every smartphone today has billions. But with quantum computing, we're moving beyond bits altogether. Quantum bits, or qubits for short, work using the rules of very, very small things, the rules of quantum physics. Rather than a light switch, a qubit works more like a dimmer switch, which can vary brightness and colour of light along a spectrum. Instead of just on or off, a qubit has a whole sphere of possible states. This means that quantum computers can handle extremely large problems using relatively few qubits. In fact, a quantum computer with just 300 qubits would outperform all the world's supercomputers working together. Now, we're not quite there. I'm working on 4-qubit devices at the moment. To make a qubit, you need something very, very small, like an atom, for instance. I'm isolating individual phosphorus atoms and precisely placing them in a silicon microchip. You could fit 1 million of these atoms across the width of a single human hair, and I'm able to control them one by one. These atoms are the 4 qubits of my quantum computer, and I'm going to use them to do the first quantum calculation in this technology. The type of calculation I'm trying to do is called a linear system of equations. Linear systems are a kind of problem that show up in nearly every field of science and engineering. They're useful for things like artificial intelligence, as well as for modelling large systems like the weather or the economy. Some of these problems can get so large that even the biggest supercomputers wouldn't be able to do them. They would take hundreds of thousands of years to finish. But with a quantum computer at full scale, we could bring that time down to seconds. 50 years ago, one of the first computers took us to the moon. Today, I'm helping build the first quantum computers. Who knows where they'll take us in the next 50? Thank you.
Thanks, Georgina. Now we have Margia Haque talking about optimization of decentralized supply chains.
Just think about a situation. You have gone to a supermarket to buy a particular brand product for you. Unfortunately, the product is out of the market. So, you have to buy another brand product for you, and if you like it, you may switch to the new one in future. As a result, the previous brand company have lost a potential customer like you, not only for now, but also forever. Though the manufacturer of that brand company produced the product in right quantities, but still, they couldn't reach up to your hand. Now let me say, what was the reason behind this stockout situation? There may be thousands of reasons that can cause this type of disruption. As the products have moved through a number of stages before it reaches to your hand, any mismanagement among these stages can cause significant customer dissatisfaction like you. These interconnected stages that consist with the raw material suppliers, product manufacturers, warehouses or storage locations, distributors, and finally retailers who sell the products to you is called supply chain. However, if these stages are controlled centrally, considering all the members of the chain together, then it is called centralized supply chain, which is relatively easy for planning, as there is only one business authority who can manage all the decisions of different stages. But If the stages take their decisions separately to maximize their own profits without considering the other members of the chain, then it is called decentralized supply chain, which is becoming more common in today's global world, but less studied in literature due to its difficulties in planning procedure. In my PhD research, I am working in this unrevealed area where I am focusing on how to model such a complex decentralized supply chain network with different independent entities who have their own business strategies and also who don't want to share all of their own information to others due to market competitiveness. In my research, I'm trying to use different optimization techniques like bilevel optimization, game theory, simulation optimization, and others to develop some mathematical models for a complex decentralized supply chain network with multiple stages, having different multiple objectives in each stage. I'm also considering uncertainty in every possible parameters to make the models more realistic and robust. So I hope that my research will help the real-world supply chain practitioners to take their decisions more effectively to ensure overall supply chain coordination for a complex decentralized supply chain network so that next time you can find your desired product in the store. Thank you.
Thank you, Margia. Now we have Noah Jenkins talking about protecting the public when businesses are their own judges.
An Englishman, German, and American meet in Singapore and apply French law to decide whether a company, say a car manufacturer, can do business in Australia. It sounds weird, doesn't it? Especially since their decision will impact thousands of Australians. It will affect the price of cars, it will affect employment, it will have environmental consequences, and so on. This sort of thing happens all the time in arbitration, and you'll never hear about it, because arbitration is completely private. Arbitration is just an arrangement, normally between two companies, that any disagreements they might have won't go to court, but will instead be decided by people they have chosen, at a place they have chosen, and under a set of laws they have chosen. This means that the laws applied might not have any connection with the community actually affected by the decision. In its own way, arbitration isn't that different to Dick's proposal in King Henry VI, aside from the whole killing thing. It allows companies to choose the laws that apply to them so that they can maximise their profits. Now, wider community interests in things like the environment, the economy, public health or otherwise, depend on the law for protection. This is because they aren't the types of matters that private companies will normally prioritise. They're just an extra cost that doesn't benefit them. So when these companies get to decide which laws apply to them, as in arbitration, it's these community interests that get forgotten and aren't protected. My research explores how arbitration can be changed so that wider community interests are acknowledged in it. I begin by looking at how courts in Australia, England, and the United States decide cases in a way that reflect these interests. This provides a starting point for what is needed in arbitration. I have found that while courts in each of these systems share the same basic aims, the practices they actually adopt to give effect to these aims are different. By comparing their approaches and finding the common ground between them, I identify the practices necessary, at minimum, to ensure that wider community interests are protected, whether in courts or arbitrations. My research so far indicates that this requires 4 things. The cases are made open to the public, that there is a means of having important community interests represented in them, that reasons for decisions are published, and that there is some way of overturning decisions that are incorrect. The problem is that these practices are at odds with the core benefits of arbitration. My research attempts to find a balance in all of this and suggest a better way for arbitration to be conducted that implements these 4 practices while keeping its advantages. Because there are upsides to arbitration, it's just that as things currently stand, they don't outweigh the harm it causes to everyone else. Thank you.
Thanks, Noah. And now we have Elijah Frimpong Bodu talking about a procurement framework to promote health and safety in the construction industry.
In April this year, I watched with profound grief a news item on TV about a construction site accident in Sydney that claimed the life of an 18-year-old man who worked on that construction site. This incident was indeed regrettable and unfortunate, because when a worker leaves his residence and goes to work for the upkeep of his family and to contribute to the economy of his nation, he does so with the belief that he will return to the warm embrace of his family. He does not expect that his work will howsoever lead to his death or disability or ill health or injury. Sadly, this is the plight of many construction industry workers. According to the International Labour Organization, 2 million people die annually from work-related accidents and diseases, with the construction industry alone contributing between 25 to 40% of these fatalities. This shows that the construction industry is notoriously unsafe. But I will be quick to admit that many strategies and measures have been designed to control or reduce construction risk. However, these strategies are highly centered on contractors to safely manage the construction process. And we know contractors. They are profit-making organizations, and mostly they perceive safety implementation as additional economic burdens, which reduces their profit margins. Therefore, despite all these arrangements, construction accidents are still frequent. You would bear with me then that we need a complementary or supplementary strategies. Please consider this. Research has shown that over 60% of construction site accidents are attributable to professional or managerial decisions which are taken way before the commencement of work on the construction site. Would it therefore not be a good idea if we paid a little more attention to those who make those professional or managerial decisions? Well, in my research, I'm looking at the clients who make those decisions. The client sets the objectives for the project, and their decisions and approaches determines who become part of the project team, how they are appointed, when they are appointed, and the duties assigned to them. I am developing a model or a framework to incorporate safety issues into all these decision-making processes. The client has a duty to ensure that his or her projects are delivered safely. This duty is not only a legal duty, it is also an ethical or moral one. In fact, the essence of this moral duty has been espoused thousands of years ago by the Holy Bible, and I believe clients owe it a duty to diligently perform this duty. The construction industry worker deserves to work in a healthy and secure, safe environment, and it all starts with the decisions which are made by the client who procures the work. Thank you.
Thanks, Elijah. Next up, we have Muhammad Ali talking about smart homes, a vision to save energy.
Every year, UNSW remains shut down for 2 weeks over Christmas holidays. Now, apart from enjoying these holidays, one of the ultimate reasons for this complete shutdown is to save energy and resources. As a matter of fact, energy is considered as a source of survival, and intelligent energy management systems have revolutionized our daily life by saving tremendous amount of energy. The aim of my PhD thesis is to save energy, particularly for residential energy management, because recent research shows that 40% of world energy consumption is attributed to homes and buildings. Now, considering these high numbers of energy consumption, the evolution of smart homes is imperative. Now, the success of these smart homes really depends on 3 factors, which are cost, comfort, and automatic decisions. Research efforts have been already made in existing literature to overcome these issues. However, there are some still challenges which needs further investigation. For instance, most of the existing methods are based on either energy savings or comfort management. Both the objectives are not answered at the same time. Secondly, how we can introduce dynamic decisions in smart homes is human behaviors and activities are highly unpredictable. Now, to answer these challenges at the initial part of my PhD, I will build a multi-objective framework that will answer the issue of both energy savings and maintaining occupant comfort. In the second stage, a hybrid model will be developed by combining human activities and smart environments to initiate self-adaptive decisions. What next? To evaluate the proposed algorithms, I already have collected 3 real-life data sets of Australian households and passed this data to artificial intelligence techniques such as deep learning. Now, the essence of deep learning or conventional algorithms is that it automatically captures the information of users without any intervention of human beings and help us to make intelligent decisions. Now, what will be the outcome of my research? The integration of these research contributions will foster future research by bringing more financial savings, particularly to envision the agenda of Smart Cities plan. The other benefits include reduced operational cost, better quality of life in terms of comfort, ease of access, and automatic decisions for elder people. In last, I want to say that saving energy is not an individual responsibility. It's all about us. Let's work as a team to save energy and make this planet evergreen again. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mohammed. Now we have Qi Guo, Continuous Disclosure Compliance of Chinese Cross-Border Listed Companies in Australia.
Listed companies has a vital obligation to disclose important new information about the company's material matters as soon as available inside the company, but unavailable to the general public, which is known as continuous disclosure, through which people can make investments more efficiently and rationally. If put this in the context of cross-border listed companies, what would happen? In recent years, Australia has become a more and more attractive choice of listing destination for Chinese companies. The entry into force of the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement in 2015 saw an increasing number of Chinese companies listing Australia. But the problem is, Chinese companies are struggling to meet the Australian continuous disclosure requirements to be listed here. These companies have even been depicted as having poor corporate governance and transparency. Throughout the period from 2012 to 2018, more than half of Chinese companies have been delisted in Australia, among which more than 1/3 of these delistings are due to non-compliant continuous disclosure. Well, in terms of non-Chinese companies, only about 20% have been delisted, and no more than 1% of them have continuous disclosure issues. My research is designed to investigate the challenges that a large percentage of Chinese companies listed in Australia are subsequently delisted. To be more specific, my research aims to find out inconsistencies between the continuous disclosure requirements in Australia and China, and further verify whether such inconsistencies constitute part of the reasons for this issue. What problems Chinese companies would face in dealing with these inconsistencies. Whether this issue is due to reasons like misunderstanding of terms in the legislation, non-awareness of the requirements, subjective contravention, or Chinese companies' own incomplete corporate governance. Further, my research will suggest measures that may improve the continuous disclosure behaviors of Chinese companies in Australia, hopefully to realize investors' protection and market integrity, and thus to increase investments between these two countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Qi. Now we have Annette Spooner talking about dementia, the devil in the data.
Do you ever forget where you've left your car keys? Well, that's perfectly normal. But if you start to forget what those car keys are used for, that's a sign of something far more serious. Dementia is an insidious disease that not only robs sufferers of their memories, but also affects their ability to carry out simple everyday tasks, such as shopping or dressing. Every 3 seconds, someone in the world develops dementia. There are nearly 50 million sufferers in the world today, but that number is forecast to triple in the next 30 years. And with no cure or prevention available, the only hope we have of controlling this deadly disease is early detection. So the goal of my research is to build computer models that can identify early signs of dementia from medical data. Typically, data from medical studies contains a large number of variables from a small number of patients. Add to that the fact that the data is of different types, from different sources, and contains missing information, and we find that many of the usual statistical methods of analysis are unreliable. So instead, I've turned to a branch of artificial intelligence known as machine learning to build models that can search for patterns in this data. Now, a machine learning algorithm is a computer program that learns from the examples it's given and improves with experience without being explicitly programmed to do so. So we might give it examples of people with dementia and of people without dementia and train it to distinguish between the two. Simple. Problem solved, you might think. Well, unfortunately not so simple in this case. It can take decades from the onset of dementia until the symptoms begin to appear and a diagnosis is made. So some of the people that we thought were negative examples for our model may in fact be developing dementia and not be negative examples after all. To overcome this problem, we can instead train our model to predict the time to a diagnosis, even if that time is in the future. But this is difficult for machine learning because it requires a definite outcome to learn from. So my aim is to develop improved methods to allow machine learning to predict the time to an event. To date, my models have confirmed possible early markers of dementia, such as a rapidly declining sense of smell or a weak grip. By developing these models further and taking account of the changes in patient data over time, we hope to be able to uncover new information about dementia and identify people in its early stages so that we can offer them early intervention treatment or better select patients for clinical trials. It's vital that we learn to detect this deadly disease early so that we can stop it in its tracks.
Thank you, Annette. Now we have Nosafwa Tugiman talking about message framing strategies in the charity sector.
You don't have to own an advertising agency to know that there will be differences between male and female when responding to an ad. Example, me and my husband. We mostly share the same interests in life, and that's why we married, but not the way we respond to an ad. In this context, charities ad. I prefer charities who are more supportive, the one that emphasizes more positive outcomes in the campaign. However, my husband prefers a more combative campaign, and he's more sensitive with the negative outcomes that usually portrays in a charity campaign. You know, those campaigns that shows the sad face of poor kids, or died animals, or apocalypse kind of ad. If the way male and female perceive ad differently, should charities depend only on one type of messaging and brand themselves in this way? I started to look for evidence in practice and past research. I found that majority of charities can be in two ways. They can either be supportive or combative. And little evidence show how these differences can have impact on different gender. And this is where my research comes in. I want to investigate how differential framing strategies in the charities campaign can have different impact on gender and understanding their donation behavior. I started to look for evidence in the past, and in order to do so, I have to develop charity campaign stimulus, and it's not easy to develop them, but I've succeeded eventually. I've obtained interesting results. My research findings found that male participants prefer a more supportive campaign, whereas female participants prefer a more combative campaign. And these findings prove a different case between me and my husband. In order to understand how people donate to charities, it's really important. This research has become more imminent. At the next stage of my research, I will look further into political identity. It is one of the prominent factors. It's been studied in donation research recently. And this could help expand further on what people respond to charities add. To conclude, I hope that this research could help managers in charities to understand better their donors and understanding their campaign and creating a more effective campaign to get more donations. So they will get the best bang for the buck for their marketing and fundraising activities. Thank you.
Thanks, Nasafwa. Now lastly, we have Liam Cheney. Where did my cholera come from?
Last year, I travelled around Southeast Asia. Like every Australian guy on a holiday, I got a tan, a tattoo, and the worst diarrhea of my life. The doctor told me I had cholera from drinking water contaminated by the cholera bacteria. When I asked where did my cholera come from, he told me there are many different groups. In fact, each country has their own, but tracing these groups is very difficult. So why is it important to know where cholera comes from? The different groups of cholera are treated with different antibiotics. Here's an example of knowing the importance when selecting antibiotics to treat cholera. In 2010, cholera was carried from Nepal and Asia across the globe to Haiti in South America. Not knowing the source was Nepal, doctors were uncertain which antibiotic would best control the outbreak. Cholera continued to spread across Haiti, causing 700,000 cases and taking 10,000 lives. Back to my own story. The doctor lacked the resources to identify where my cholera came from. Different groups can be distinguished. However, this relies on dozens of laboratory tests. So I pitched an idea to my lab to create a single tool any doctor could use. I have created a computer program which uses DNA sequencing. Initially, I downloaded cholera sequencing samples from over 4,000 patients. These samples were then separated based on country. For each country, I defined a cholera group by discovering unique DNA mutations. These predefined groups are my tool's basis for comparing cholera from new patients. Now, I trace groups of cholera by comparing DNA mutations. To answer the big question, where did my cholera come from? The doctor could not tell me, but if he could, he would have treated me better. In hindsight, if my tool existed before I went on holiday, my doctor would have accessed it online and pinpointed the origins of my cholera, allowing him to prescribe the most effective antibiotics. But I am merely a single case. At this moment in developing countries, cholera threatens 1.4 billion people. My tool equips doctors to best treat current and future outbreaks. I offer a new defense in the battle against cholera.
Well, they were all fantastic talks, and I'm sure the judges have a tough time ahead of them. Please join me in congratulating everyone. The judges are now going to head out of the hall and take some time to deliberate. Please put your hands together for the fabulous effort of the judges. Now, if you could please Vote for your favourite talk on the piece of paper on your chair and hand it to someone at the back wearing the 3MT t-shirts. Once you've cast your vote, please join us in the foyer for some refreshments while the judges deliberate. Once final decisions have been made, we will call you back into the hall to announce the winners. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome back the judges. So the Aspire representatives are going to be the first to award their prize. Please welcome the Year 10 and 11 students from Auburn High School and Chester High School.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which this university and this event has been held upon tonight. This event, 3 Minute Thesis, has opened our eyes as emerging adults within Australia to issues and concerns within our contemporary society. To all speakers, we would like to tell you that you all truly have a talent, for it is the talent to not only tell a greater audience about your PhD research, but to impart some of that knowledge upon us. I, personally, have been inspired by your talks and hope to soon be within your position in the future. Thank you.
It was extremely interesting to learn more about everyone's PhD research, in particular the importance of exercise in improving one's health, especially as we students transition into our senior years where we might not find enough time for physical exercise, or learning more about how to tackle pancreatic cancer. However, as a group, we felt especially hopeful for the future of our waterways, especially in light of recent young adult climate change protests. And we are excited to see a swimmable Parramatta River in the future. Congratulations to Simon Lloyd.
Thank you, Auburn High School and Chester High School, and congratulations, Simon. Welcome Professor Morris back to the stage to present the People's Choice Awards. As voted by you, I'm pleased to announce the winner of the People's Choice Award is Liam Cheney. Now please welcome the judges to the stage to give us some feedback on the presentations.
So we're slow to organise tonight, guys. A lot of deliberation earlier. Now, Christine, myself, and all of the judges just coming up onto the stage want to pay our respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet tonight, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And we'd also like to pay our respects to the amazing scientists, the researchers who have put together these incredible performances. We've all learnt so much, and we've all got a sense of how passionate you are about your research. And hopefully some of us will come away feeling more passionate about your research as well. Now, we had an incredibly difficult time figuring out who was going to get the top spots tonight. And there's a certain symmetry in the awards that were given by the students tonight and also through People's Choice as well. So we feel like we've done our part and there's a good balance in the system now. Now, before we go on to announce any of the winners, we also just wanted to mention that Robin and I were talking about this on the way up the steps. 9 of the recordings tonight will be played on Robin Williams' Science Show on Radio National, which is incredible, so congratulations. We'll be recommending several others to other programs as well, and certainly mentioning some of the great research that's going on here around the corridors of the ABC. So well done. Round of applause to yourselves. That's fantastic. So I'm going to, first of all, give an honourable mention. Now, this isn't in the kind of rundown of what we're meant to be doing, but we just felt we had to do it. And we are thrilled that Simon Lloyd also got an award tonight. So congratulations. Our honourable mention tonight is Simon Lloyd, Reclaiming Urban Rivers, Is It Clean Enough to Swim? And Christine just wanted to say a few words about Simon's piece.
Thank you very much. Simon, congratulations. It was a magnificent presentation. It was absolutely authentic from the heart. It was absolutely, it was critical information for us to all hear. And you did it so eloquently. You simplified an incredibly complex, challenging concept, but you made it so accessible. Your image was perfect. The way you wound your storying back to that image, back to your central theme, was compelling. So thank you very much. And it was magnificent to think of the First Peoples in that context of elders, of grandmothers, Aboriginal grandmothers, being able to be on country, be on waterways, as we always were in the past. So thank you very much.
So that's the kind of bar we were working with. So obviously it was really hard to figure out our top 3. Now, we actually asked the organisers of tonight's event whether we could split third and second as equal second prizes. They said no. So we had to pick a third prize and a second prize. Our third place, and we're very thrilled that he has also won an award tonight, is Liam Cheney. Where did my cholera come from?
Thank you, everybody. Liam, congratulations on this recognition. You were able to engage us as judges, without doubt. We were absolutely enthralled by the way you exercised us around with a single tool, 1.4 billion people across the world. So whilst it started with your own experience, you took us on a journey that moved out from that experience. Through your clinic, it was authentic. Through to research, you talked about the number of patients. You described your research to us. That was very, that was appropriate. It was part of the criteria. There was humour. We loved that as well. Your graphic was very clean, clear, and it was very compelling. Well done. Congratulations. Thank you.
Right, crunch time. So, second place for tonight. We just thought that this presenter was so fantastic at communicating their area of science and putting it into the context of the broader discipline. I thought it was compelling. We came away saying, wow, after the talk. It's Georgina Carson, Computers of the Future, using tiny particles.
To follow on, Georgina, congratulations. You simplified something incredibly complex for us, but you are so articulate. The pacing was superb. You were able to present. You're very discipline-based as well. We really appreciated that. And you gave us a little hint of what you're doing within the broader discipline area and the current inquiry in that space. But your presentation was absolutely almost faultless. Thank you. Congratulations. Brilliant.
And after much deliberation, our winner tonight, with an indelible image that we'll never be able to wipe from our minds, igniting a civil war within a fortress of pancreatic cancer, is John Kokonos. Nice check.
John, from the very beginning, we were enthralled. We understood the importance of the topic. We understood the impact and significance of your work in this particular field. The analogies were very relevant. The image was at one with what you were saying. The cohesiveness of the presentation was impressive and resonated with all of the judges. Well done. And it was just an outstanding presentation. Absolutely consummate presentation. Well done.
So on behalf of all the judges, thank you so much to all of you for sharing your research with us. Congratulations on the work that you're doing. We loved all of your speeches. And I really do encourage anyone in the audience who has interesting questions to ask any of these guys about their work to come and have a chat to them as well. I think we're doing drinks and canapes and so on. So come ask your questions and come and hear the 5-minute version, or 10-minute.
Thank you, everyone. It's my pleasure to close off this event. I really think that every year I come to 3-minute thesis and you think there can't be better talks, but every year you guys raise the standard, so congratulations to all of you. I'd really like to thank our judges, Bill, Robin, Christine, Niraj, Tanya and Carl. Obviously an incredibly hard job. I just know from talking to people at drinks that everyone had their strong opinion, so I can imagine getting 6 people to sort of agree to something is an incredible achievement. So thank you for your insights. I want to thank the Aspire judges and all of you. Thank you so much. I mean, you always bring a unique feel to this event, and always latch onto something that is a little bit different from, I guess, what other people are thinking, and I think that's a true sign of that you've really engaged with it. So thank you. I would like to thank our Chancellor, David Gonski, for the support he gives us and for his special guest that he's brought today. Thanks to DEC, UNSW DEX and UNSW Hospitality for their support for the event. But also, really, I need to thank my GRS staff who are all in the black T-shirts around the edges here, particularly Bianca, so I know who's spent a long time getting this organised. So thank you to all you guys for all the hard work you've done. I'd like to thank Erin for her awesome emceeing. Thank you so much. And once again, thank you to our contestants and to everyone else who made this night possible. And please join us for more drinks and refreshments out in the foyer again. Thank you again. And I think we're having photos, so you guys have to come with some photos. So,
Thanks, mate.